Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to lesson 7. Here we're going to cover a very important concept in Arabic grammar, and that is the concept of possessions. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example of that. So take a look at the phrase rahmatullahi. Rahmatullahi, which means God's mercy. You'll notice that this phrase has two parts, two nouns in fact. The first is the noun rahmatu. Rahmatu means mercy, and Allah, the word Allah means God. So in this case, we're saying the mercy of God. So rahmah is the possessed noun. Okay, when we're saying possessed here, we're not talking about jinn, we're talking about is something that is owned or possessed by something else. And in this case, the possessor is, in this phrase, it's the word Allah. Allah's mercy. Okay? So you'll notice that the possessed word in Arabic comes first, and the possessor comes afterwards. And so rather than translating this as God's mercy, we may choose to translate this as the mercy of God in order to make it follow the same order as it does in Arabic. Now there are basically three grammatical rules that you must know when it comes to possessions. The first one, I've already said, the possessed comes before the possessor. The second rule is the possessed does not have tanween, neither does it have al. So this first word in this grammatical construction, the first word rahmah, does not have a tanween, neither does it have al. So I cannot say al-rahmatullah, that would be wrong. Okay, so it's just a plain word without tanween, without the al. The third rule is that the possessor must be in the majroor case. The possessor must be in the majroor case. And so often that is indicated by a kasra, and that's what we see here. Rahmatu Allahi. Rahmatullahi. So Rahmatullahi, the mercy of God, follows each of these three rules. Let's see a few more examples. And as you're looking at these examples, mentally check and make sure that all three of these rules are being followed. So the first phrase that we're going to take a look at is Ahlul Kitabi, a phrase that appears often in the Quran, the people of the book. Here, let's confirm. Ahl is the possessed. Kitabi is the possessor. The people of the book. And again, if you're ever confused which one is possessed, which one is possessor, just translate it into English using of. The first word is possessed. The second word is possessor. So the people of the book. And by the way, so if I translate this linguistic or literally, the people of the book, that might not make too much sense. Like, what does it mean? Does the book own the people? No, not exactly. This is one of those cases where you can't really translate it literally, and that happens a lot with possession constructions in Arabic. We'll come back to that later in the lesson. So Ahlul Kitabi, the people of the book, the possessed comes first. The possessed doesn't have tanween or al, and the possessor is in the majroor case. Now one thing I'll mention is that the possessed can be in any of the three cases, and that depends on what other rules are being applied and so on. But the possessor has to always be in the majroor case. Okay, Rabbul Alamina, the Lord of all created beings. So we see this in the Fatiha. Rabbu is the Lord. Al-Alamina is all created beings. You'll notice that this is in majroor case. It's the plural form is usually alamun, but in this case it's alamin because it's sound masculine plural. And you can go back to our lesson on case endings if you need a refresher on that. Okay, let's take a look at two more examples here. Ahlu hadhihi al-qaryah. So these two examples are a little bit more complex. I want to introduce some more grammatical rules here. And the first thing you'll notice is this generally does follow the same three rules. So these rules are critical. You can't change, you can't violate these rules. So Ahlu hadhihi al-qaryah, the people of this settlement. So this settlement, hadhihi al-qaryati. Now this is using the rules that we covered in the last lesson on this and that. Okay, so if you need a refresher, go back to the last lesson. But hadhihi al-qaryati is this settlement. Why are we using hadhihi here? Because al-qaryati, settlement, is a feminine word. So the people of this settlement, ahlu hadhihi al-qaryati, the possessed comes before the possessor, and in this case it comes before the demonstrative word as well. The possessed does not have a tanween or an al, and the possessor is in the majroor case, al-qaryati. عذاب يوم عظيم, the punishment of a mighty day. So in this case, we see an interesting thing here, which is that the possessor is indefinite. So the punishment of a mighty day. The possessed comes before the possessor, it doesn't have tanween or al. And the possessor is in majroor case, so yawmin, and also azimin. Azim means mighty, and it's an adjective being applied to day, to yawm. And so both of them are in the majroor case, and they agree on gender, singular versus plural, and so on. Alright, so one thing I should mention is that typically the possessed has a definite meaning. So if I say Ahlul Kitabi, the people of the book, alright, and you'll see that this even with all of the examples that I showed before, Ahlu hadhihi al-qaryah, the people of this settlement. Adhabu yawmin azim, the punishment of a mighty day. Okay, and this is the case even though I'm not using the word al. It's just inherently to this grammatical construction. Whenever I translate this into English, I should put the word the before the possessed. Okay, and so just to really reiterate that point, even if the possessor is indefinite, the possessed takes on a definite meaning. So you'll notice that here, the punishment of a mighty day. So what if I want to actually use the indefinite meaning? For example, this phrase here from the Quran, a pit of the fire. A pit of the fire. So here I want to use an indefinite possessed word. And so typically in the Quran, the way that meaning is created is using the word min. So I can say hufratum minan nari. Hufratum minan nari means a pit of the fire. Okay. The last thing that I want to mention is to go back to what I said earlier, that sometimes possessions shouldn't be translated literally. So let's take a look at a few examples of this. So let's say I say something like qawmu su'in, that literally means the people of evil. Now in this case, it's not, evil isn't owning people. But what I mean by people of evil is just simply an evil people. So this is just kind of using a possession as an alternative to an adjective. And sometimes this is used for the purpose of balagha or just rhetoric. We see qawmu su'in, people of evil, where it means an evil people. Some more examples of that. Ibn sabili. Ibn means son. Sabil means path or road. Ibn sabili, the son. It means son of the road, literally. But idiomatically, or if I was to actually translate that into English properly, I would just say traveler. Traveler. That's just a nice way of saying traveler. Ahlu baytin. Ahl means family. Bayt means house. Family of a house just means household. Household. So let's take a look at a few exercises, and I really recommend that you go through these exercises and try to do them on your own first, because this possession construction is really important. Again, it appears everywhere in the Quran, and so you need to make sure that you have a good understanding of it. So let's take a look at a few examples. Fi sabilillah. Fi sabilillah. What does that mean? Fi means in, sabil means path, Allah means God. Fi sabilillah, in the path of God. In the path of God. So the possession construction is right here, the path of God, and fi just appears before that as a preposition. You'll notice that the effect of fi is to put sabil in majroor case. That's why it's sabili. Fi sabilillahi. And why is the word Allah in majroor case? The word Allah is in majroor case because it's possessing sabil. It's the possessor for the word sabil. Fi sabilillahi, in the path of Allah. Sabilul mujrimina. So this is the opposite meaning. Sabil means path again, but mujrimin is criminals. It's the plural of mujrim. Sabilul mujrimina, the path of criminals. You'll confirm that all of the grammatical rules of possession and possessed they're being followed here. So sabil is doesn't have a tanween, it doesn't have an al. Al-mujrimeen is in majroor case. How do we know that? Because of the ina. Remember, the sound masculine plural, the majroor case is the ina ending. Ayatul Rahmani, the verses of the most merciful. The verses of the most merciful. Okay, so the next one is a full sentence here. Ardullahi wasi'atun. Ardullahi wasi'atun. The earth of God, the earth of God is wide. The earth of God is wide. Okay, I'm translating that pretty literally. The earth of God is wide. But I want you to understand a few important things here. First is this is the possessor, and this here is the adjective. Now typically the adjective appears right after the noun that is describing. However, wasi' is describing ard. We're saying that the earth is wide. But because the possessor and possessed are one unit, they cannot really be separated. Okay? They cannot really be separated. Only in very, very rare circumstances are they separated. So any sort of adjective, whether it's describing the possessor or the possessed, appears after this unit here. So wasi'atun describes earth. And how do we know, by the way, it's describing earth and not the word Allah here? One is by context, but suppose, the word was such that it could describe either the possessed or the possessor. In that case, you can take a look and see which one does it actually match with. So for example here, I can take a look at the case endings, and I know that this is marfu', this is also marfu'. Whereas the word Allah here is majroor. So if it was describing the word Allah, this would also have to be majroor. I can also take a look at gender and other things. So for example, ard is actually feminine, and so is wasi'a here. Wasi'a is feminine. And if you're wondering why the word earth is feminine, it doesn't carry any of the typical signs of femininity, but there are just some words in the Arabic language that you just have to learn them. They're just feminine words, and they're just basically by usage. And so earth is one of them. And so we'll end here. Let me give you a few more examples from the Quran that you can study and translate on your own. So take a look at these 4 examples, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments, and inshallah we'll go through them and answer them to the best that I can. Alright, as always, if you've benefited, please share this video with one other person who could benefit, a family member or a friend, and Jazakallah khair. Thank you for listening. See you in the next lesson.